good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to the Infinite Way, where spirituality meets humanity. And I'm excited here to introduce to you Keron Dufresne. Keron has been studying and practicing plant medicine for over 40 years, and she's dedicated to helping others through native healing traditions and naturopathic practices. As a clinical herbalist, she explores natural remedies through the use of plants, essential oils, frequency healing, diet, and exercise. Beyond her work in natural medicine, Kiran is a passionate advocate for individuals navigating the complexity of the medical system. She believes in empowering people to make informed decisions about their health, particularly when they or their loved ones must rely on allopathic medicine. I want to welcome Kiran. Welcome, Kiran.
Thank you, Dr. Anoli. It's a pleasure to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone.
And it's a pleasure to have you here too. And for those of you who don't know, Kieran and I are dear, dear friends. And I just want you to know that this woman brings so much to the table. And I would love to share how we met. We met in Northern Canada at a beautiful, beautiful women's retreat. And, how you kind of ended up there is a story in and of itself.
Yes, that is true. One of our friends, she was invited to go up to your retreat and she was excited to go and was talking about it. And she was going to take an apprentice that she had in her shop. And the day before the retreat, she calls me on the phone and she says, I woke up this morning and my apprentice is gone. Do you want to go in her place? And I'm like, without hesitation, yes. Because I was kind of like really envious of her that she got to go because I could already sense the intensity and the power of what that retreat was going to be. And when she asked, it was like didn't even think to ask it my husband or anything. I just said yes. And I told him that later that day, I said, hey, I'm leaving tomorrow morning and I'm going to Canada for 11 days. And he goes, what? And I said, I know it's just a fluke. It just happened. And so he wished me well and onwards to Canada I drove and it was, oh my God, so powerful there. The
Was.
women and the energy, the
Mm.
teachings, the plants that were in the wild. It was just a phenomenal place.
And that's exactly how I remember you because I remember meeting you and you took us in a walk through the plants of the bush, through the bush of northern Canada. And I was like, this woman is able to pick out and talk about all of the different plants here. And this isn't even her regular territory. This is
Mm.
like out here in the bush in northern Canada. We're 100 miles shy of where there are no more roads anymore. So we're like
Fun.
22 hours away from home. And by the way, even though you lived in Pennsylvania and I lived in New York, we only lived about 20 minutes away from one another to a half an hour, so we were always close by. But to have had the great fortune to meeting you and having you share your knowledge it was just phenomenal.
It was a magical place for sure. I mean, here you have two-thirds of the women are in their menopause stage, and you just walk out and you walk into this field, and it's like I remember putting my arms out, going, "Nobody move, just stop." And there's this whole field full of blue cohosh, and that's just like a natural remedy for women that are in the menopause stage. And when I showed Grandmother Isabel, she's like, I mean, it was like an acre's worth. It's not just a small patch. We're talking
Right,
like an
right.
acre or 2 acres of nothing but blue cohosh out in the middle of this field and with a pond and a mountain and a creek. It was just like phenomenal conditions for it. And so many people to this day are still going to that field and getting that medicine because it's so powerful for women
Yeah.
that are going through
And
the changes of life.
exactly, exactly. And then having gotten to know you, and then us maintaining our friendship after we left the retreat, was phenomenal because I remember being over your house and then you having neighbors knocking at your door saying, this element is going on, or this is going on, and that's going on. What do you recommend? And like, in you just sharing the plants that you have right there, whether it was the black cohosh or whatever the case, the mullein root or the this or the that. And I was like so fascinated. And I remember asking you, well, why aren't they going to the doctor? And it's just like, well, I am the doctor for all of these people. Because I remember also talking to the person who had knocked on the door and them basically saying, oh, no, 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 no. I go to Keron first. And then if she is exhausted and says that I need to go to the hospital, then I'll go. And I just thought that that was so powerful to be seen like that in your community.
Yeah, that was a shock when it first started to happen. It was like somebody said, you're just in casual conversation, and somebody says, well, I'm dealing with this. And then it's like, oh, I can help you with that. I can give you this, this, or this. A lot of people in the neighborhoods was like a baby boom or something when I first got there, and all these babies were getting ear infections. And so I would give them mullein garlic oil, and the mullein helps the pain in your ear, and the garlic helps with the infection. And it's like a lot of times when you call the doctors, they say, well, you need an appointment. Well, it's Friday, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Your appointment is going to be Monday, because that's when they tell you Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You have a newborn that's not going to let you have any rest. So when they heard that, hey, go ask her, she may know, and I give them the ear oil. And by Monday, when they go to their appointment, the doctor says, well, there's nothing going on there. There's just a little bit pink in the ear, but no infection. They tell their friend, and their friend told their friend, and next thing you know, my house is full. And I said, well, I better get back to wild crafting and making tinctures and salves and lotions and teas. And when they came a knocking, I was prepared. And it does give you a sense of belonging, a sense of welcomeness in your community. And that's what a community is, everyone helping out where they can, doing their part. And when you live out in the country, the doctor is like, you have a little clinic that's only open 2 days a week, and you're 35, 40 minutes from the nearest hospital or doctor's office. You probably don't have the gas in your vehicle to get there, so you're going to rely on people that you know will help you in your community. And that's why I continue to do what I do.
And it wasn't just your community. I mean, you expand all the way out throughout the Amish community also, didn't you?
Yes, yes, because we have a lot of Amish in our area, and they do a lot of plant healings with their own stuff, but sometimes it's just not local enough to them, because their community's small, and if they moved here, their herbalist may not have came with them. I had a neighbor who had a son that became deaf at the age of 5 or 6 from multiple ear infections. And I was down there buying plants one time, and I was talking with her, and I said, well, have you tried mullein garlic ear oil? And she's like, no, we have no access to it here. So I went home and brought her a jar, and we kept bartering. I'd get plants, she would get plant medicine, whatever her kids needed, elderberry syrup. I taught them how to we go harvest them and make elderberry for the winters. But a couple of years later, I was down there buying plants, and she would thump her foot so her son would hear her, feel the vibration of her thumping, and then she would make a very deep, loud sound so it would muffle. And he turned and he just like looked at her, and he's like, Mom, I can hear you. We're all like standing there. I mean, the kid's now 17, 18 years old.
Right.
He's been doing the mullein garlic oil for about a year and a half now. And she just looked at him, and she's like, when did you start this? And he said, it's just, well, I wasn't sure at first, he says. He says, I could hear things, and then I wasn't sure what I was hearing, and then I could hear like things, and I would look, and there would be a bird, and I could hear it singing, and then I could hear muffly noise, and I would see your mouth moving, and he knew words when he before he became deaf, he could speak, so he kind of still spoke, but you know how deaf people speak, you can't really pronounce words. And
Right.
he was talking, but he was talking at 17 like he had just learned talking at 2 or 3, but he could hear.
Yeah.
So af
Phenomenal.
after a while, the mullein oil just started to thin the scar tissue enough to where it got blood flow again. And once that blood flow came, then the tissue started to repair itself. And
Beautiful.
I ended up with 6 chickens and a bunch of bread and pies on my porch the next morning. And word was sprung around the Amish community.
That's phenomenal. And I know that like we're talking about plant medicine here, but I also want to segue into understanding the differences between our regular medical field. This isn't to exclude our regular medical field, but you have to understand what you're entering into when you talk about your regular medical field. And what I'm saying is that we have to understand that the medical industry is based on chemicals and the chemical processes, whether they put the chemicals on top of the plants or they're just creating the synthetic chemicals completely, but that what we're accustomed to when we enter into the medical community to go to a doctor's appointment or whatever else is that they're going to prescribe a pharmaceutical. And in that prescription of a pharmaceutical, you're going to get chemicals. Okay. And that isn't necessarily the full potential because our bodies are made up of potentially chemicals, but we have our own electromagnetic field, so electricity, that's part of ours. And then that other aspect is just what we're putting into it, the food
Mhm.
aspect of it, the agricultural piece to it, and that we don't treat all of those things. We only treat one thing when we're going to a regular doctor. So, will you just talk to us a little bit about that?
I am not totally against pharmaceuticals. Sometimes plant medicine just isn't strong enough to
Right.
give us the relief that we need. So you do need to depend on the allopathics. There needs to be a unity where natural and herbal and allopathics all work together instead of this battle back and forth. Like, we need to have unison. I suffer from asthma, and there are times when I need to go to a pulmonologist, a specialist, and I need to take medicine because there's times where it becomes acute and I just can't control it enough with what I'm doing.
Right.
I can reduce and hold off until I can get what the allopathics give me. But it's my choice how much of it I take, not theirs. It's my choice on how many things I want you to give me. When I was in a chronic state, I was doing 3 inhalers and a tablet every day on top of nebulizer treatments, breathing inhalers. There were 3 steroidal inhalers that I was taking, 3 puffs 3 times a day. That's 9 puffs of 3 different inhalers. Each one of those puffs start in your mouth because it's an inhalation. So you're putting that chemical on the roof of your mouth. You're putting that chemical down the back of your throat and then down into your digestive system. And you're putting 3 of those synthetic based steroids in your mouth at one time, 3 times a day. So you're putting a coating that's going across the top of your mouth and all the way down into your stomach when you do an inhalation. It's not like a pill you swallow and then once it starts getting past your esophagus and gets into your stomach acids, it'll break down. So it breaks down in your stomach. This starts breaking down in your mouth. So then it starts building a residue on the roof of your mouth. And does your doctor say, hey, when you take this, you take a puff and you rinse your mouth out, then you take a puff, rinse your mouth out? No, they don't give you guidelines. They just
No.
say, take these. And then all of a sudden you're back in the doctor because you have thrush in your mouth because that's a side effect.
Right.
So they're giving you another drug to counteract the thrush that you have. So now you have two synthetic chemicals, two synthetic pharmaceutical drugs with tons of synthetic chemicals in them that you're digesting through your mouth into your stomach. That's starting to thin your lining on your stomach wall. You're starting to notice that you can't eat nuts and seeds, so now you have diverticulitis. Or you eat something and then you're instantly bent over because you got severe cramps on your left side or right side, and you rush to the bathroom. And when you're out in public, sometimes you don't make it, so then that causes embarrassing moments. That's because the synthetics are tearing havoc in your gut. They're releasing free radicals. Free radicals do so much damage inside of us that we just can't control when you're taking a lot of pharmaceuticals. Then you're increasing yourself in other diseases like Crohn's, diverticulitis, glucose intolerant. The list can just goes on and on and on. We used to have pharmaceutical drugs that were made from plants. Then they learned that, oh, we don't have to grow all these plants. We can make these compounds from that plant that we use in our medicine synthetically.
Mm, okay. Okay. And so the average person is just being torn up that has
Yes.
any kind of serious element because they're taking multiple, are we taking pills for the problem and then pills for the symptoms, or excuse me, the side effects,
Yes.
and then side effect after side effect after side effect, it just goes on and on and on and on. I mean, wow.
Then they start treating you for other diseases that the drugs started to tear and cause to begin with. So now you got two major symptoms going on with more multiple side effects. It's just crazy. And the doctors, if you don't tell them, hey, well, you're changing my medicine, now I'm taking this. Do I still take this? 90% of people that are out there being prescribed drugs, especially the seniors, it's just crazy. Look at your grandparents or your mom and dad. See how many pills they're taking.
Hmm.
Ask their doctor, I thought you took them off of this. Did you tell them not to take it? They don't tell the patient not to take the drug after they change it. So now you're taking this drug, still getting prescriptions for it. Then you're adding this drug, which is supposed to replace this drug, but they didn't tell you not to take that one. So now you have these seniors who are on 10 different pills and they only need one. But that 10 pills has caused so much gut destruction that they have all these other symptoms that they can't even simply eat anything without it just filtering right through them.
Wow. So I know that we have to find some kind of balance and complement in terms of naturopath and in terms of our regular medical system, because you're right. Sometimes we need stronger prescriptions. Sometimes we do need to be able to approach it. But talk to us about your experience and how you found to advocate for yourself in terms of being that person that has this knowledge, because the typical person doesn't even have this knowledge. And I know you have a story to share, so will you take us through your story?
So in November, the Monday before Thanksgiving, I had to go to from Pennsylvania to Chicago, which is like a 10, 11-hour trip one way, and pick a client up and bring them back down for a friend of mine. And so as we're driving up, we're in Indiana and we get stuck in rush hour traffic. And we've had a lot of storms lately. So they're piling up all this brush along the highway and they had it smoldering. There was a light little drizzle out and they were thinking, oh, okay, it's good. And they had all these piles along the highway that they lit on fire that are just burning this low smoke. Well, all of a sudden this gust of wind comes up and you know what happened. The whole pile just
Right,
ignited
right.
and then you're stuck in traffic. We're all the way to the left. So Long story short, I ended up getting taken to the hospital on a return trip in Ohio because I had smoke inhalation and I was not breathing. I was in respiratory distress when I got into the emergency room, and they pumped me in 10 hours time. They gave me 400 milligrams of prednisone to take the swelling in my lungs down. It wasn't really that my lungs were swelled, it's that they were full of smoke. So they did the prednisone. I did 20, 30 breathing treatments with albuterol, which it makes your body just do this shaking, and prednisone just tears down your muscle tissues drastically. But then were going to keep me, but I didn't have medical insurance. So when I didn't have medical insurance, their whole stature changed. It was like rush, rush, go to your doctor. So I left and came home, called my doctor the next morning. He scheduled an appointment, and I ended up for Tuesday. This was like a week later, and I ended up Thursday night, Thanksgiving, after we got to settle in for the night, ended up being rushed to the emergency room. At this point, I was in respiratory failure. They tried to put this oxygen mask on my face. It was like if you have sleep apnea, it's like a sleep apnea mask that automatically pumps oxygen.
Right.
I kept telling the guy it wasn't syncing with my breath. Even though I was panic breathing, every time I went, the machine went and threw oxygen in, so we were off sync.
Right.
I ended up ripping it off my face because they would not adjust it, and it was actually causing me to suffocate in my own breath. Even
Oh.
even though for 3 hours I kept telling him this isn't working with my breath, and eventually I did. I just pulled it right off, and then they took and gave me forced oxygen, which is a hose about this big around that they hold right in your mouth, and they just force continuous nonstop oxygen. So it's kind of like a respirator, but you're not sedated and put in a coma and put on a respirator. That
Right.
was where they were headed. They were going to put me on a respirator. And I told them, please, I know my body. And they said that I'm on my deathbed. And so they put that fear in me that I needed to just relax, or they were going to induce a coma. And I was relaxed. I was just telling them this is causing more of a reaction inside my body than a help. And we need to, you need to listen if you want to help me. You don't know what's going on inside of me. I do. And finally, when they put that force thing on, I settled back and just let it constantly give me oxygen. And after 2 days, I'm like, okay, can I just have the regular nasal canal, 4 liters of oxygen instead of this 20 liters just coming in like you have a fan just blowing all this air right in your face continuously nonstop. It's just
Right.
and for days, and it's like it wasn't giving your body time to adjust to breathing on its own in an awake state. But finally, I just they left the room, and I took the one off, turned that hose off, put the other one on, and put it on 5 liters, and just had 5 liters blowing. And when they came in, they said, "Oh, when was the doctor here?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I just
Did it yourself? Yes. Yes.
because I felt like they were trying to put me into the state to put me on a ventilator."
Mm.
And I knew because when you're no insurance and they put you on a ventilator, then that gives you ICU costs and care, and you're in a coma, and so then they have to tube feed you, and so your rates, your costs keep going up. And I'm like,
For
you're
every
not
more
doing all of
patient.
this to me.
Right. Right.
So after 3 days of ICU and me putting myself on 5 liters, they turned it down to 3 liters, and my body responded. You know, it did its own breathing, it recuperated. And when you're an asthmatic person who is or have COPD, when you're given, your oxygen levels aren't supposed to be up at to 100. They're supposed to be in the mid 90s. You know, it's dangerous for someone that's asthmatic or COPD to being forced to over 100% oxygen. And they just wouldn't listen. And it's like, you know, what I'm saying is correct because you went to school, you know, asthmatics need a lower oxygen. Train these people in the ICU,
Right.
train them to where, hey, she's asthmatic, she's not your typical person having a respiratory failure, she's got a chronic condition. Don't force so much into her if she's saying it's causing more damage and she could feel it. Listen to us when we're in the room. We're not trying to say we're better than you, we're smarter than you, but we know our own bodies. Listen to us when we're saying too much is too much or not enough is
Right.
not enough.
Right. Right. So you have this experience. You go through the iterations. How did you advocate for yourself? How did you get your point across so that they would actually respect what you were trying to say?
I just stayed firm and I just continued in a repetitive, demanding. At first, I was like, please don't, please don't. And then I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing this because of this. It's like they tried to give me, they wanted to give me this sedative pain drug because when you're in respiratory distress, you're breathing okay. And then all of a sudden you start to panic breathing. That's part of getting rid of the smoke in your lungs. It comes and goes. And so when you're in between that, they wanted to keep your breathing relaxed by relaxing you with a drug. So the drug they wanted to give me was Demerol. And I'm
Okay.
like,
That's no.
I'm not taking that. Yes, you are. You need to. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. I said, well, fine. If you want me to have something to relax, my husband brought my things from home. I will use them. And I went and took the bag and took out the oils and things that I use every day that he brought to me. And I said, this relaxes me. I don't need that. Well, we're going to give it to you anyway. And I said, so I had to like literally hold my hand on my thing, on my IV and say, no, you're not. I am not taking a narcotic. You are not putting my body through that shock. And well, we need the doctor. And then they look at you and they say, she's not going to let us do anything. So they stop doing things. And then they leave you, well, fine, you do it on your own, you know, and then it's like, seriously, you're gonna, this is how I'm gonna get treated because I'm not gonna take a narcotic? I want to see your supervisor, or I want the counselor that the from the church or whoever comes in. I want somebody to come and talk to me. So then they label you as difficult.
Yeah. Because you're not being a sheep, and you're not just doing what you're being told to do. And I think about all of the people who don't have the knowledge that you have, and how they go through this, and then they not only do they get medication that they don't necessarily need, right? Because there's no such thing as no, but there's such thing as not that way. And then on top of that, they get hit with these exorbitant costs for having been in the hospital and having been with someone making these decisions, having been hit with the price of all of those decisions. So, wow. And then I know that you were able to at least see that each decision that they made was going to effectively hit you with a higher bill, weren't you?
Oh yeah. My bill is outrageous. It's over $56,000 for 8 days, which would have only been 5 days had the hospital followed protocol for respiratory patients. So you're in the respiratory unit, you're not breathing. They walk in your room highly perfumed. There's a sign on your door in big red letters that your pulmonologist put: no cologne, no perfume, no loud shampoos or fabric sheets smells on the door for things. There was a sign on my door. This one lady, she's a tech. She comes in and she says, I'm going to take your blood pressure. And I got a whiff of her and I'm like, no, but you need to please leave. And she kept saying, no, I need to take your blood pressure. And I literally got up out of my bed and went and locked myself in the bathroom. My doctor had just left, reduced all my meds, had just left. I had to buzz him while I was in the bathroom because I was going back into an asthmatic attack because she would not leave my room. And they had to move me because my room was so perfumed and it kept me in an asthmatic state. And then they come in and say, well, you have like your oils are on the table and they're irritating to the staff members. So what are we going to do about that? Like my oil is eucalyptus radiata. It's camphor. I mean, it's there are things to help relax your breathing. And so because I got so mad, I didn't get mad. I had to literally lock myself in the bathroom because she was adamant about taking my blood pressure. And I was being as polite as I could. I said, ma'am, your perfume is putting me in an acute state. You need to please leave my room. Well, I need your blood pressure. No. And she says, give me your arm. And I said, I'm going to give you nothing. And I literally had to go to the bathroom and just call on the call button, get her out of here, please. And about that time, my husband walked in and he's like, started yelling. And then the doctor come back in and he went out in the hall and he says, who in the living was just in this room? There's a sign on the door. Now get me another room. I have to move my patient. She can't come into the room with this. It's just crazy that you.
Wow. And so, but just didn't want to listen. Wow.
She told me,
Okay.
she goes, well, I
Okay.
read the sign, but I
So,
didn't think it
what did you
applied to
learn
you.
from this experience? What is it that you want to share? Go
Have
ahead.
have somebody with you, if you can, that can sit there. I mean, I know that we can't have a partner there 24 hours a day, but don't be afraid to use your voice. Don't be afraid that they're not going to help you because all you got to do is say, hey, I want to speak to my advocate, because every person in the United States in a hospital, there's a health advocate in that hospital that is there to help you. And you can flat out tell them, please, I don't want all of these drugs. I don't want this. Just know your body enough to know how to respond when somebody's pushing something that you don't need. Do your research on your condition. That's one of the biggest things I can say is research your condition.
Yes. Yes.
Know what it's going to do to your body. Know how your body is supposed to feel and act with this condition. Don't just have a doctor say, okay, you have diverticulitis. Eat whatever you want, do whatever you want. We'll give you something for your acid reflux when it starts bothering you. Ask him, what is diverticulitis? What exactly does that mean? And if he doesn't tell you, research. Ask your kids, ask your friends, ask a nurse, ask somebody, you know, to help you better understand what it is that you have. And then find herbalist. One thing an herbalist does, we don't go by diseases. We go by symptoms. So you have a runny nose, you have a sore throat, and your ears hurt. We're going to deal with each one of those symptoms. I'm not going to say you have a sinus infection, here, take an antibiotic. I'm going to treat the runny nose, the ear, and the sore throat. We're going to treat all three. You know,
Right.
we're not just going to assume that you have a sinus infection because you come in with those three symptoms, or that you have COVID. We treat symptoms with plants, and that's how Creator did it. That's how He wanted us. That's why He made the plants. That's why it's passed down in our memories from one shaman healer to another shaman healer to one herbalist to another herbalist. It's a dedication and a desire that we feel in our hearts that we chase. You know,
Yes. Yes.
I didn't become an herbalist just by eating all these plants. I did it by studying because I wanted to study. I felt a desire in my heart to study. I felt it in my. Your body will tell you what it wants and what it needs. If you listen to it, it will speak.
So I want to emphasize and highlight what you just shared. So, in this day and age in technology, there's absolutely no reason, none whatsoever, that we can't do research. With the internet available, with AI available, now we can just plop in the symptom, the pharmaceutical, anything that we have, we can plop in and we can basically say, tell us about it, tell us what it means, what are the symptoms, how is it treated, how is it treated naturally, how is it treated, in chemically, in terms of pharmaceuticals, and have a plethora of information at our fingertips because of technology. There's no excuse.
Right.
What do you?
I totally agree. They even give you like information in your prescriptions when you get it. The pharmacy gives you one, it comes with a lot of the drugs in the packet itself. Don't just throw those away. They tell you what the side effects are. They give you a breakdown of the chemicals that they use to create the drug. They give you the whole mapping of all the molecules and everything that are in there. So they break it down to where it makes it even easier for you to sit there and say, okay, they put this in there. Let me look this up and see what this is because I don't know. But also, I want to point out to be if you have seniors or people that are handicapped that can't really voice for themselves, and you see when you go visit them that there's 15 drugs on their counter, ask them, hey, have you discussed with your doctor how many of these you're supposed to be taking still and how many you're not supposed to be taking? Because a lot of times you'll find 7 or 8 that the doctor assumed they were smart enough. That's what they say. Well, we thought you would be smart enough to stop taking that one when we prescribed you another one. How many people are going to do that? They're going to think, "Oh, that's on addition to, not in replace of." So make sure when you go to the doctors, you ask, "Is this a replacement or an addition?" So you know to disregard and cancel all those other refills on the ones that are being replaced, and help your seniors, help kids, be their voice. Don't let doctors use them as pin cushions and test prodigies, because they're not that to us.
Right, right. And I know that we're coming up on an hour, and it's been so wonderful getting this information from you. So I feel that I would be remiss if I didn't share the fact that you do vibrational medicine, as well as the fact that you're a certified life coach. And could you just share a little bit about that with us?
Yes.